If you're new to Git, this presentation is meant to be an introduction to Git. The objective is to get you up and running with Git using SourceTree, which is a GUI-based client for Git. Git is what we know of as a DVCS, or Distributed Version Control System. What this essentially means is that each developer working on a Git project has a clone of the remote repository on their machine. This is a key departure from version control systems such as Subversion. One advantage that this provides is the ability to work offline and make commits locally. One thing to keep in mind is that repositories should not be confused with branches. A repository, in fact, contains branches. The basic idea in Git is that we branch off from our main branch and work on a feature, and at some point merge our changes back into the master branch. This allows a developer to work in an isolated manner and commit their changes only when they are ready. In Git, the developer works on one branch at a time, which is called the working copy. Changes in the working copy are first staged, then they're committed to a specific branch in your local repository. From your local repository, you will push your changes onto another specific branch on your remote repository. To further delineate the distinction between your local repository and your remote repository, let's solidify the concept of a master branch. Once again, let us clarify that while a master branch does indeed reside on the remote repository, like so, a master branch also resides on your local repository. The master branch on your local repository tracks the changes made on the master branch on the remote repository. Similarly, any additional branches we will create locally can either be pushed onto the remote repository, or we can fetch remote branches into our local repository. In this slide, we're going to go over an example flow. We will start off at the remote repository. We're going to fetch a branch from the remote repository, and the changes will be reflected on our local repository. In other words, that same branch will be created on our local repository. Okay. From there, we can choose to check that branch out, and checking out essentially means that it is becoming our working copy. So that branch is now the branch that we are working on. All right, it's become our working copy. We can make changes on that branch, and then we can add our changes to the staging area. Okay. After we have staged our changes, we're going to commit our changes to our local repository. From there, we will push the branch, the updated branch, back into the remote repository. GitLab is a cloud-based Git repository manager which your organization may or may not be using. Your company may be using something like Bitbucket, for example. GitLab will host your entire project, all of its branches, and allow you to set access controls, do code reviews, etc. If you log in, you will be taken to this screen, which shows you all of the projects or modules which your company is working on. If you click on one of these, you will be taken to this screen, which will show you what is called the SourcePath, or if you click on this drop down and select HTTPS, you will be shown the URL which points to this repository. Now let's take a look at SourceTree. At the top left corner of the program, let's click the Clone New button, which will bring up this box. In this window, we want to paste our source path, or the URL which we obtained from GitLab earlier, and in the destination path field, we want to put the location where we want that repository to be cloned. Let's do an overview of Git. In the leftmost pane, we see what can be described as the repository view. So here is one repository, here's a second repository which I've cloned, and in the next pane we see our branches. So at the top are the local branches, at the bottom are the remote branches denoted with a cloud icon here. In the local branches, you will see that one of these branches is in bold. What does that mean? That means that is our working copy, or the branch that we are working on currently. You can click on any of your local branches, and that will effectively make it your working copy. Next, we see the changes that have taken place in chronological order on our working copy. And if we click on one of those commits, we can see that these were the files that were affected. So a developer made changes as denoted with this yellow icon here to all of these files. The developer added a file, which is denoted with a green plus icon. And had there been a red minus icon, that would have meant that the developer deleted a file. So if we highlight one of these files, we see the exact changes that were made. Here we see that a line was deleted from the code, a line was added, a line was deleted, another line was added, and so on. Next, we will talk about GitFlow, which is a branching model or best practice used by some companies, where the master branch is protected, so to speak, by the use of a buffer branch, which can be called the develop branch or anything really. So what happens is that actual development occurs by branching off from the develop branch into a feature branch and then merging back into the develop branch. That develop branch is then merged back into master. So what that adds is this added layer of review where things are not simply merged directly to master. They're first merged to the develop branch, which is then merged to the master, usually by a lead developer. In this type of environment, we have what are called merge requests, which are usually made within your repository manager program. So in this case, we will go into GitLab, click on merge requests, and be brought to this screen here, where we will choose a source branch and a target branch. And in this case, our target branch is a feature branch, which is acting as our develop branch according to the GitFlow methodology. And our source branch is simply a branch with the developer's name followed by the user story. Next, we want to assign this merge request to someone, usually a development lead.